because we had schools, giving away kids spots on the team who were already there, those who thought that they would be coming in with the place to play college sports, and then they were later told that they had to rescind their offers. So it's been chaotic, and even with the implementation or approval of the settlement, I think we're going to continue to see some chaos in some facets.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to a special edition of the Odd Coaches podcast as we give our initial reactions to the House versus NCAA settlement. I am your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and again, the long-awaited House versus NCAA settlement is finally a reality, paving the way for universities to, yes, pay their athletes directly starting July 1st. This will take some time to unpack because, hey, it was a Friday news dump on the West Coast time. So kudos to whoever advised Judge Wilkins on how to make this kind of slide away with other things coming on the plate. So this is a lot to consider. It's a huge day in college sports. Some of the initial questions are, how are schools going to actually pay their athletes? Who is going to police this new revenue sharing world? Will this provide stability? And who are the real winners and losers? So before we dive in with the panel, the CKSA project has followed this proceedings from the beginning. And this past year alone, we've gone to the NCAA Men's Final Four, where major topics of discussion included navigating the job search in this player era, the future of revenue sharing and collective bargaining, developing roster managing strategy, the transfer portal. We attended the Allen Sack National Symposium sponsored by the Drake Group Educational Fund, and topics included the changing landscape in college sports, education, equity, new eras, new rules, the academic playbook in this new era, beyond the game, prioritizing college athletes' mental and physical health, and how economics is going to impact this. CKA is doing 3 active research studies, one on student athlete motivation, which is an extension of our doctoral work. 2, student athletes' perspective on collective bargaining. As you see, this is needed. And 3, coaching in this era. Last month, as you know, I was at the Black Student Athlete Summit presenting on finding the balance, navigating academic and athletic success, and the major topics of discussion: the evolving collegiate landscape, financial literacy and entrepreneurship, identity, purpose and well-being, mentorship, leadership, allyship, and yes, branding, social media, and the professional transition. The insights gained from all of these events are invaluable to our growth and national expansion. And as a result, we're enhancing curriculum, we're training mentors, we're continuing our advocacy and partnerships, content development, and providing as much support. And this episode is one of those things. So I want to introduce first our panel. Cassandra Ramsey is an independent attorney and NIL expert, and she is the president of the Drake Group. She is joining us. Robert Abney, the owner and creator of 11 Words Consulting, member of RefRep's team and our favorite administrator, but sometimes fans, we've got to let you know how great Robert is. So we threw his credentials out. And also with me, Will Cotton is our captain for life, but Will actually played for me. And now he is an outside voice as we attempt to work through all of this. Cassandra, I'm starting with you. What are your initial thoughts? And are there any winners and losers in this House settlement, in your opinion?
So my initial thoughts is, like, wow, so today we get it. We've all been waiting for the outcome of this settlement, and with it being such a long time between the fairness hearing, which was April 7th, and here we are 2 months later before we get her decision. I think some people really legitimately probably started to scratch their head like, wait, is she going to approve this or not? And we've had schools begin to make changes as if the settlement was a done deal. Back when they first announced that they had reached settlement terms, we've seen the NCAA do away with the national letter of intent, and the colleges replace them with these contracts that they're entering with agreements that were contingent upon the settlement being approved. We've one of the big issues that led to the delay with the settlement being with the settlement being approved was the roster limit issue, because we had schools, giving away kids spots on the team who were already there, those who thought that they would be coming in with the place to play college sports, and then they were later told that they had to rescind their offers. So it's been chaotic, and even with the implementation or approval of the settlement, I think we're going to continue to see some chaos in some facets.
All right, Robert. I mean, for the last 3 years on the show, this seems to be a monthly topic, and now it's approved. Any thoughts, any reactions, and any winners and losers in your eyes?
I think the one thing that Cassandra said that I definitely agree with is that it's going to be chaotic. Because even judges aren't typically rule setters, and that's kind of what she's done in this ruling, is kind of set the rules. And I don't think anybody really knows yet, and we won't, what this is going to look like. I don't think anybody knows what this is going to look like for a while, because we all know one thing: just because a ruling was passed down does not mean that all of the court stuff and all of the lawyer stuff is finished. We are not done with that. I'll tell you that.
All right, Will, you are a regular guy. You got young scholars growing up. You've got friends in coaching. You've got former student athletes around you. What is the layperson's thoughts to this House versus NCAA settlement?
I guess we can start really having a real conversation now. Now we're having the rules of engagement. We can understand, like, okay, so these are the rules. All right, how I'm going to attack this, how I'm going to look at this, how I'm going to interpret it. You know what I'm saying? And from that, they're going to mature that entire framework, I would say. That should be the process. It's like, okay, well, this is the rules now. What we go through, whether it's litigation, violations, anything that goes on, we take note of that, and we either add things or remove things that works for everyone. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it sounds like it's a good foundation. Like Robert says, I don't think, and Cassandra pretty much said, it is what it is right now. So, we'll see what happens. I think they can build from it. And, again, if everyone's upset, means it's kind of working. So let's stick with that.
All right. So, fans, in segment 2, we're going to actually review what the settlement is and get our panel's thoughts on how this may or may not work. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches Podcast. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Keith Adams, and for years, I've witnessed the struggles student athletes face on how to truly balance the demands of academics and athletics. It's a question that I have dedicated my life to answering. That's why I wrote Finding the Balance, my personal journey to academic and athletic success. It's more than just a book. It is my personal journey, and it is filled with hard-earned lessons from decades as a coach, educator, and now president of the CKA Safe Project. Inside, you will find practical advice, real-life stories, and a clear roadmap to help student athletes, coaches, and parents navigate the complex world of balancing sports and education. And now I am thrilled to bring this message to a wider audience as a proud member of the Cascade Sports Network. We're partnering to amplify these crucial conversations about student athlete success. I believe every student athlete deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential, both on and off the court and the field. You can purchase your copy directly from our website at www.ckasafeproject.org. Join me and the Cascade Sports Network as we work together to help every student athlete succeed. All right, welcome back to the iCoaches Podcast. And in segment 2, let's go over the basics. So the settlement will allow schools to start directly paying athletes for the first time ever. And July 1st, they're going to start with an expected salary cap of roughly $20.5 million. Now, that's $20.5 million for all sports to be distributed however each school sees fit. Additionally, all future NIL deals between boosters, collectives, and athletes will be verified by a new entity designed to ensure that they're for valid business purposes and not merely the kind of recruiting incentives that have been flying around the country in recent years. Cassandra, when you see this, what problems, if any, do you anticipate?
I think I'm gonna just go ahead and jump to what I think is the elephant in the room. And Will was mentioning rules, and the rules are set. The problem with the quote unquote rules being set from the settlement is that it wasn't collectively bargained for, or any quasi collective bargaining or whatever you may want to call it. Even though we had plaintiffs' counsel who was representing a subset of the college athletes, and it's a class action, so they're meant to be representing all athletes who could be affected by the settlement. We're still entering a situation where we're placing caps on athletes' revenue instead of zero. Now it's 20.5 million, and we haven't given the athletes the voice that in the form that I think is needed in order to keep these lawsuits from happening. So I think we're just gonna see different questions and issues coming up, and they will certainly come up, I think, in the form of other lawsuits.
All right, Robert, I like to tell you this on every show you're on when we talk about issues. You're the administrator.
Mhm.
This has just come to your desk. What are you thinking, sir?
Well, first of all, I agree 100% with Cassandra, and not bringing up either collective bargaining or Congress passing some kind of legislation to govern this means that that can of worms is not going to be closed anytime soon. But let's talk about something a little bit different in terms of how that money is going to be spent, because we know that for the most part, football and men's basketball, those are the revenue drivers in athletic departments. So we know that it's highly likely that schools are going to spend the vast majority of their money on those two sports, which means a couple of things. Number one, you have schools and conferences like the Big East that don't have football. So, does that create a competitive imbalance? Is that something that anybody thinks that something needs to be done? I guarantee you the SEC and the Big Ten are going to have a say about how that money is going to be spent. You also have, that isn't mentioned anywhere in this whole settlement, you also have Title IX concerns. How are you going to ensure that $20.5 million or whatever number it goes up to, how are you going to make sure that that is spent equitably? Remember, it's not an equality thing, it's an equitably thing. And how are you going to do that? Because if you're saying we're going to pay football and men's basketball and you're not paying any of the women's sports, that's a significant issue, shall we say. Third is you got the schools that are not Power Four. Where are they getting this $20.5 million? Are they going to be able to come with it? My guess is no, the vast majority of them. And, so you already have a gap between those schools and the Power Four schools. And we're always going to get upsets, because you're talking about, 18 to 22-year-old kids. There's always going to be upsets. But how are you going to, how do you keep that gap from widening? And do we care about that? And then last but not least, you have all the non-revenue sports. You got track and field, you got tennis, you got golf, you got gymnastics. I mean, all of these other sports, how are they getting paid? Are they not getting paid? And how are they going to, bottom line, how are they going to survive in this environment? And will they survive? Because if you're at a school here in Texas, like say you're at Texas State, Texas State is in the Sun Belt Conference, decidedly not Power Four, really not even Group of Five. How do their non-revenue sports here survive? And can they? All of those are questions that we don't know the answers to.
Yeah. And Will, you're a St. John's alum. Had a heck of a season this year in men's basketball. When you see how it's set up, and you're one of the schools that don't have football hogging up everything, how do you, as to quote John Thompson, Joe the fan, looking at this?
Yeah, it's hard to look at stuff like that. I think it's just out of reach, understanding of what the landscape is to even put that number out there. Um, just things they weren't even thinking about that obviously are very important. Title IX is important. All the other sports, that need that revenue or need that money. So I think it's going to be difficult. But I think one of the things like Robert was saying, St. John's would take advantage of something like that. I don't have a football school team. I don't have football. So I could put a nice pot into basketball and then get what I get, or and this maybe I'm better at baseball. Maybe I have a team that nobody even thinking about, like, oh, well, hey, we don't care about basketball and football don't exist. Let's just do baseball, whatever. So, it's unfortunate to see that this is what they kind of came up what they came with. So many holes that you can poke in. You can tell it could trickle down through the administration in some way because it lacks so many details that it require, and it's going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be difficult, but it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. It's not gonna work.
Perfect example of what Will just said. We're taping on Sunday. Last night, Coastal Carolina qualified for the Men's College World Series in baseball. Okay. Now, Coastal Carolina, they've won the national championship before. This is not a Johnny come lately program. This is an established program. But maybe they decide, you know what, we're going to put all of our money, we're going to keep this machine rolling. We're going to put all our money into baseball. Will we see schools doing that? I don't know. Maybe.
It looks like an opportunity. Looks like an opportunity. So, Cassandra, not to put you on the spot, I hope you can do this, but can you introduce our audience to NIL Go and let our audience know, hey, you're going to hear this, you better pay attention, and we'll take your notepad out because this affects you as well.
So NIL Go is the clearinghouse that you will heard me refer to that's been established under the settlement, and the purpose of it is supposed to be to make sure that NIL deals, third-party NIL deals, are in fact an actual NIL deal and not just something that's disguised as pay for play, that it is the fair market value. It is established by Deloitte. They will help run the algorithm. So part of the settlement is that athletes now will have to report any NIL deal that in the aggregate is $600. So anything that adds up to $600 or more, you have to report. So it's basically going to be reporting everything, right? And that's how the team going to be reporting everything, and it will go to Deloitte, who established NIL Go, and they will look to ensure that it's for fair market value and not pay for play.
All right. So, fans, in segment 3, we're going to introduce you to the College Sports Commission as well as a implementation timeline we believe they're going to use. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches podcast. Hi, everyone. Dr. Keith Adams here. And for over 30 years, I've dedicated my life to helping student athletes succeed, not just on the fields and the courts, but in the classroom and beyond. And that's why I founded the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project understands that finding the balance between academics and athletics is crucial for long-term success. That's why the CKA Save Project offers a range of programs, including personalized consulting, mentorship, and coming in 2027, our innovative Gap Year Basketball Academy designed to assist both young men and women reach their full potential both on and off the court. I'm incredibly excited to announce that the CK Save Project is now partnering with the Cascade Sports Network. This partnership will allow us the opportunity to amplify our message and reach even more student athletes through the Odd Coaches podcast and other exciting initiatives. Join the CKA Save Project and the Cascade Sports Network as we empower the next generation of student athletes. Visit CKA on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org to learn more. Let's work together to find the balance and help unlock your potential. Welcome back to the Odd Coaches Podcast. In segment 3, we want to introduce the College Sports Commission. The College Sports Commission is the newly established independent body tasked with overseeing the transformative changes to college athletics following the House settlement. And they are proud to announce that Brian Seeley is their first chief executive officer. Brian Seeley is an experienced legal and operational leader with a distinguished career in professional sports and private industry. He's going to lead the commission in this new era. Let's talk about the job itself. As the first CEO, he's going to build out the organization's investigative and enforcement teams and oversee all of its ongoing operation and stakeholder relationships. The College Sports Commission, under his leadership, will work continuously to educate schools and student athletes about new rules, how to comply with them, and how to use the new technology system, CAPS and NIL Go, that the commission is putting in place. He is put over by Greg Sankey and all of the administrators from the Power Four. They had a lovely press release that you can read at your leisure. Cassandra, when you saw this formation happening over the last few weeks and months and so forth, any thoughts on the College Sports Commission and the role it's going to play? What are your expectations of them or predictions?
My first thoughts of the College Sports Commission is really coupled with the comments that now NCAA President Charlie Baker made at a night commission event when he, announced pretty much that if the settlement was approved, that the NCAA would kind of back away from policing amateurism, right? And if that's even still a thing, and policing essentially the enforcement of the settlement as it relates to NIL deals and pay for play. And now we would have this new entity, the College Sports Commission, that's going to govern all that stuff while the NCAA focuses on academics and running championships. So I was just like taken aback because, the NCAA has died on this amateurism hill for decades and, have taken 1,000 beatings trying to preserve this thing. And now they're walking away from it and going to allow this new entity to come in and regulate. So, it's going to be interesting to see what type of enforcement mechanism they set up and how they choose to go about trying to police this and how different it may be from what the NCAA did. So I'm like everybody else, I'm waiting with my popcorn to see what happens.
Robert, most decisions are made in the summertime with polos, t-shirts, sundresses, flip-flops. This has come across your desk and it's being implemented July 1st. What is your reaction to the College Sports Commission from your administrative lens?
Well, first of all, I looked at Charlie Baker's letter, and the thing that struck me the most is how like it was. I mean, he's just like, that's not all y'all now. We're out. We ain't doing nothing. I can't see how this college sports commission is going to be significantly different in terms of enforcement than what the NCAA did. Basically, what you've done is you've cut out that enforcement piece from the NCAA and you've created this new thing. Will it be more efficient? I don't know. Are the rules going to be significantly different? Well, I mean, you're talking about limiting boosters, so there's that. But you know, once you enforce something, whatever the first case is, once you enforce that, or once you say, okay, here's a violation, here's the penalty, who's going to carry out that penalty? Who's going to make sure that happens? You know,
Kind of like schools and the cell phones.
is Greg Sankey still going to be happy with Brian Seeley if the first school that gets busted is Texas? And is he going to carry that out? I don't know. I mean, really, nobody knows anything on this. And like Cassandra said, get your popcorn ready.
Yeah. All right, Will, I'm putting you back to work. You have worked with compliance, you have worked with onboarding, and this has come across your desk for one of your projects, and you're the project manager of this. What are you thinking when you see the College Sports Commission come across?
I think like Cassandra and Robert says, my popcorn's ready. And I think it comes down to integrity. Like Robert says, if Texas comes to a violation, are you going to get a bottle of wine at your desk? Are you going to get a $5,000, dollar in your locker in the gym? Are you corruptible? And again, it's not 5,000, it could be $50,000, to get out of sanctions. It's all about integrity, but to have one focal point, one person to make those decisions, it's tough. It's tough. It should have been some sort of collective or something where, yeah, if we it's hard to corrupt three people. One guy, it brings a lot of questions. Um, an idea, if he is who they think he is, if this guy is going to go and enforce rules and keep his integrity, and like you said, if Texas is the first team to follow the violations and bet, here's a problem with you, that here go your issues, here goes your penalties. But if we start seeing, different solutions or different reasoning for things, like Texas only gets like a 3 game ban or a 3 year ban, whereas like another school may have like a 10 year ban for whatever reason we don't know. It has to be consistent. So yeah, it works with integrity. So if it works, it works. But like you said, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
All
And
right,
I
go ahead.
think, I think in the past, I mean, there's been some pretty clear stuff where you've seen, big schools, big name schools, they do something and they get a slap on the hand, and then you get Prairie View A&M down here doing essentially the same thing, and the NCAA threw the book at them.
Yeah.
And I mean, the inequities in that are clear, and you can say, oh, well, it's different because, and the rules they're violating are the same, and well, you're either violating the rule or you're not. So the punishment should be relatively close to the same thing. And I think that's going to be interesting. And the other thing is this, and we all know this. There are coaches in these Power Four conferences who have been busted for cheating before. We know there are coaches in these Power Four conferences cheating right now. We know that when these new rules are established, we know that there will be coaches cheating to violate those rules, basically because they've got to win. To keep their job, they've got to win, and that's what they do. So what is the response going to be from this College Sports Commission? How's that going to be handled?
Well, one more thing I think we should bring up when it comes to enforcement is the discussion around the fact that there was supposed to be this affiliation agreement circulating where the schools were going to have to say, yeah, we'll be bound to whatever rules and enforcements that the College Sports Commission based on the settlement. And if the schools did not want to opt into that, then they would essentially relinquish their membership within their respective conference. So we'll see if schools are gonna agree to that, if they're going to challenge it legally, if a clause like that would even be enforceable legally. These are all questions. So, you know, like I said, more chaos.
All right. So the following dates, and yes, fans, this is ready for July 1st. So June 6th, the settlement was approved. And June 11th, NIL Go portal launches. June 15th is the opt in deadline for non defendant schools to fully commit to revenue sharing. July 1st is the first date for direct institutional revenue sharing. July 6th, opt-in schools must designate student athletes permitted by the settlement to remain above roster limits. The start of the 25-26 academic year, with the exception of designated student athletes, fall sports must be at or below roster limits by their first day of competition. And December 1st, 2025, with the exception of designated student athletes, winter and spring sports must be at or below roster limits by their first day of competition or December 1st, whichever comes first. So let me share some words with Charlie Baker before I allow our panelists to provide their closing thoughts. Some of the things Charlie Baker said in his letter to the NCAA members: significant challenges remain, including the attempts to force student athletes to be classified as employees, despite their leadership at levels opposing this. In addition, attacks persist on college sports' ability to set national rules regarding years of eligibility, the policies that enable the next generation of young people to access educational and athletic opportunities. And states continue to undercut one another in a race to the bottom by challenging the ability of the NCAA and conferences to establish and enforce rules. Cassandra, as we close, any thoughts about Charlie Baker and his request for assistance from the federal government with all of this?
I think, with the implementation of the settlement, many in the NCAA were hoping that Congress would be able to use the settlement as like a launch pad for what they would like to see codified as it relates to college sports. So I'm not at all surprised that we're still lobbying the Congress to get some regulation over college sports. And I think largely because they know that this is likely to continue to lead to future lawsuits over different points of the settlement, like we already discussed here today. So not at all surprised. Do I really think that this may move Congress in any one direction over this at this point? Probably not. Not anytime soon. So we'll see where we go.
Hey, Robert, you heard from the president. Any final words before we close?
Lot of finger shaking there. A lot of finger shaking there. A couple of things though that in that timeline that I think are interesting. First of all, the NIL Go portal is launching. So we're taping on June 8th. So that portal is launching Wednesday. So I'm assuming that somewhere along the way, as this settlement was coming out, that portal was being built by somebody. I hope, because that's not something that happens quickly.
Oh yeah.
That does not happen quickly. So that'll be interesting. And then the other thing, and maybe you all know what this means. I'm unsure what a designated student athlete is. Is that somebody who's already got a roster spot because they were already on the team? Do y'all know what that is? Because I do not.
I'll defer to you, Cassandra, because I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure either.
And we're trying to know.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, there are three people. I don't know how much Will's paid attention, but I guarantee you that, Cassandra and Keith and myself, I've kind of paid attention as they go along, and I don't know what that means.
I don't even know what
That's interesting. Okay.
All right, Will, I need you to bring your day job in. We do a lot of work with computers and onboarding and networking. When you see that implementation schedule and you hear the words of the president, Charlie Baker, what do you think about this is what you actually do in terms of programming?
Dude, it ain't gonna happen. I no way believe that this implementation is going to happen on time. I no way, no way. Too many moving parts, too many questions, litigations, people things, and there are people who are going to push back and be like, no, this is incorrect. We're not going to do this. Like that's stupid. Let's not do that. Let's do this. And they're going to revisit the framework and say, okay, well, let's think about this again. It's ambitious, even in a like an organization, like a large organization. That's an ambitious move. It works for like, mom and pop shops, but this is a huge, 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 huge entity with so many different like moving parts and things like that. It's going to be hard to do this. It's going to be hard to do it. And that timeline is ambitious, saying that I'm not doing anything else this entire summer, but this is what I'm working on, which is a lie because one, I got other things I got to do. Two, I have a life, I have a family. I'm not going to spend my life doing all this stuff. So I just don't think it's going to get done. I just don't think it's going to get done. And they're going to keep dragging their feet and they're going to things that stop it. And I'd say it'd probably go into 2026 for sure.
Wow.
I don't
All right.
I wouldn't bet it.
So, final words from me. The CKA Save Project is one of the premier student athlete advocacy organizations in America, and we work daily to provide clarity and comprehensive support when student athletes need it most. The Odd Coaches podcast, as you've seen, is the authentic voice of sports leadership, where coaching wisdom meets real talk. CKA Save Project remains dedicated to empowering student athletes, particularly those in underserved communities, to achieve their full potential in this changing climate. It really focuses on the fact that experience does matter and that holistic, integrated work with student athletes is important because these are real people dealing with these issues. We are committed to leveraging our resources to assist. So stay tuned. And hopefully this will work out. We're not overly optimistic, but again, I appreciate the panel being here. And this week's a special week. So from June 9th to June 23rd, with our friends at BSN Sports, CKA and OCP gear will be available. Follow us on social media at both CKA Save Project and Odd Coaches so you can get your Odd Coaches merchandise, your CKA merchandise, and help us raise a little bit of funds because there's a lot going on with this. So on behalf of our Cavalcade of Stars, I'm Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and or watching the Odd Coaches podcast, also seen on the Cascade Sports Network. And we will see you on the sidelines. Until next time, take care.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach FRANCHIZE. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches Podcast.